So, Archie Boston, in both his personal as well as his professional life, took many great risks through his execution of contrast and delight. He had some shock and layered meaning. In fact, Boston, he loved the more shocking, the better. So, he was born in 1943. He grew up in Florida. He was the son of a sharecropper, and he was the third of 6 children. His most influential sibling is on the right of him in this advertisement. His name is Brad, and he's about 4 years older than him. And Brad always really encouraged him to pursue his college degree. There's the college he went to, Chenard in LA. He studied commercial art there while living with his brother, who had also attended that college and was pursuing his own professional career. So his brother was a huge influence in that, in encouraging him at school and critiquing his work and all of those good things. And he also went on eventually to get his master's at the University of Southern California, which he used to his advantage in order to be a professor. And one big quote that really encompasses his work is, "I believe that the first thing I must do in creative work is to seize the attention of the audience. Then I try to burn an image into their minds, an image that is unforgettable. I want my work to evoke, even provoke, a reaction, whether positive or negative." So he really liked the shock factor. That was kind of a big deal for Boston. So he worked in many different agencies: Carson and Roberts, Hickson and Georgeson, Richard Hayes Woodward and Associates, and Botsford, Constantine, and McCarthy. So these 2 works are when he actually worked with his brother, and they bought a bungalow in California, and they called themselves Boston and Boston Design. They did work for kind of some local places. On the left, you have something for it was a logo for Dr. Princeton Perry, and on the right was a promotional advertisement that we will talk about later, but that was in order to promote Boston and Boston Designs. And this next 2 that we're going to talk about are things that he worked on at McCarthy, which is where he also met his lifelong friend and copywriter friend and colleague Dale Zarette. And these were done with the intention of shock factor, once again, very bold typeface, very intentional placement and intentional font size as well. He wants you to be brought in and sucked in with that big bold headline and then read further in that copy below. And the one on the left is for Pentel pens, and on the right is a lease advertisement for First Western Bank. So after his career kind of died out, he really wanted to teach classes. He had been teaching since 1967 with his brother Brad, but he became a professor at California State University, Long Beach, when he was 34, and he eventually received tenure there. He was able to do freelance teaching, which he loved, and he traveled with his students on study abroads, and he did a sabbatical. So he took time off to do a sabbatical, and he did a project which was kind of a documentary style ordeal, and it was entitled Videotaped Interviews of 20 Outstanding Los Angeles Graphic Designers. This included Saul Bass, Jack Roberts, and many others in the LA area who he went and talked to, and it was a really interesting piece that he curated over that year sabbatical. He also was the first African-American president of the Los Angeles Art Directors Club, and he also wrote a book called Fly in the Buttermilk, which he even admitted within the book that it was an advertising ploy. You can see the front cover here. It is stark contrast with the black and the white, and the name of the book is written on the milk carton, which is kind of interesting. So that kind of is another piece of work that he embodies his style. So here is one we're going to analyze. It was done in 1966, and it obviously has a Ku Klux Klan reference. So it is a black man, it's actually Archie, in the KKK garb, and there's a visual contrast you have here, as well as an odd cultural shock. You have this visual contrast of a black man in white clothes, especially the black and white. It's very symmetrical. There's lots of negative space around his face, which draws attention to the middle, which is his face, having a very serious expression, which kind of adds to the shock factor. And it really is a piece that makes you double take when you look at it. And the second piece we're going to talk about is a consumer magazine ad where it says, "Abolish capital punishment." And on the surface, that seems very odd. Why are you talking about that? You're taking a political stance. But when you look further, it's an advertisement for First Western Bank, and it really talks about capital and how the bank will help you gain capital. And so is in the terms of money. And so it's really interesting. Done in 74, uses a hot button topic to intrigue you. And then he has this huge typeface with a serif, very intentional period. And it takes up about 1/3 of the page, that very first statement. Very bold. And he has a kind of a coupon style cutout in the center, and then some very, very small copy on the bottom along with a logo. And so again, intrigue, really trying to push the boundaries of what people think of. So I did a riff of this, and it was for Family Dollar, and which is a dollar store like Dollar Tree or anything else. And it says, "Won't you be my neighbor?" So this is a cultural reference to Mr. Rogers, our friendly neighborhood TV guy back from the day, and it kind of encompasses some of the things, and it's that Archie does, and it's also a little bit different. So it has a cultural reference, which adds shock value, like Archie's "Abolishing Capital Punishment" and then "Won't You Be My Neighbor." It's layered. It may take a second reading to understand what is meant behind the scenes, and it also has relevant content for the consumer right in the center there. So I have a QR code there, whereas on Archie's piece it is a cutout that you would bring or send to the bank. And lastly, in the similarity department, it is kind of a similar layout, similar bone structure, if you will. Big typeface, and then something relevant for the consumer, and then some extra copy and a logo at the bottom. The differences are that mine has a shock factor that's more warm and friendly and inviting, versus where his is like about conflict. People conflicting whether they should have the capital punishment or not, what that means. There's a lot of layers to that. Secondly, mine has a QR code, which is not kind of the copy that he includes, and that was intentional for a modern audience, what they would use and would make the most sense for them and be useful for them modern day. Lastly, I have a lot less copy at the bottom than what Archie does, and that was also kind of retrospective for modern audiences because they do have a limited attention span. So this is kind of my riff of Archie versus me and what that means. But overall, Archie Boston, he loved to push the boundaries of advertising, and he used different avenues and angles to his advantage in order to achieve a shock factor, which he is most known for.